Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win, or you find a way to lose. Timothy Bradley, we all know that he and Terence Crawford have a really close bond. It formed when Terence Crawford was a sparring partner for Tim Bradley, and Tim Bradley learned really fast that Terence Crawford was no average fighter. He went on to say that based on those sparring sessions, he said, look, this guy is not a sparring partner, he's a champion. Fast forward to where we are, that's exactly what Terence Crawford is. And although Timothy Bradley is always championed Terence Crawford's in-the-ring successes, he somehow was kind of underappreciated. I'm talking about Tim Bradley now, kind of underappreciated as a fighter, but at the same time, he was very marketable. All boxing fans loved him. There were a lot of casuals who knew about him. Now, how he got himself to that point, I think some of the, they have those series that were running, the 24/7s and stuff like that. That helped, that let me tell you, that 24/7 HBO used to run, that helped fighters a great deal. You have these different platforms, ESPN, DAZN, and these other ones. They run similar things, but it's not the same as HBO 24/7. And I think most would agree. I mean, that HBO 24/7, I don't think many of us missed those episodes. How many of you still go back and watch episodes of 24/7, especially when Roger Mayweather would get in front of that damn camera, right? Very entertaining, gave you a little bit of insight about the fighters, what they're about, their family, and you got to see them in a different space. Timothy Bradley was never really brash, a lot of profanity, but he was all about business. Got to meet his dad, through the show to kind of get an understanding of the background and kind of the values instilled in him and who instilled that in him. Terence Crawford now, it's kind of similar to Timothy Bradley, man. Great fighter. But Tim Bradley wasn't really ranked as a pound-for-pound best, but he was ranked as a very great champion who would take on anybody and who's very durable. But I just don't think Terence Crawford has had the kind of crossover appeal from just diehard boxing fans to casuals, kind of like Tim Bradley, for a lot of reasons, right? But I think we'd be waiting around for a long time before we get somebody to say that Terence Crawford is just, I'm talking about from casuals and diehard boxing fans, that Terence Crawford is great. And it's kind of the same thing with Tim Bradley, but Bradley was able to cross over. So in my opinion, man, when you talk about Tim Bradley and you talk about achievements, you talk about accolades, right? Terence Crawford has achievements and he has accolades right now. You talk about skill, you talk about bravery, you talk about the physical and mental toughness. This is where I think is where the discernment comes in. With Tim Bradley, we've seen skill. With Terence Crawford, we've seen skill. With Tim Bradley, we've seen the bravery. Providnikov, Pacquiao. When have we really seen bravery from Terence Crawford? Now, I'm not saying he's not brave. Some would say, well, anyone who gets in the ring is brave. Nope, don't take it to the stupid. Get your casual backside out of here. Of course, anyone who gets in the ring is brave. But I'm talking about the type of bravery that Tim Bradley had to show. Who was that guy he was fighting, man, that clipped him early? I think it was the first round. Had his neck snapped back. Looked like the fight was over. He came back to stop him. The guy had really heavy hands, man. Anyway, I can't remember, but that kind of bravery. We haven't seen Terence Crawford really go through that. Okay? As a result, a lot of people, when it comes to Tim Bradley, really started to pay attention and get behind him because Tim Bradley was an exciting fighter, and you weren't just going to come in there and hit him hard, knock him down, and he was just going to wilt and quit. Nah, he was going to come back and come back hard. But the thing is, I'm not saying Terence Crawford can't do that, but when have you seen him show or have to show that kind of bravery? Maybe because he's just that good, that great, that he hasn't been put in a position for us to be like, whoa, he's in trouble. he's hurt, and see him after still take a couple rounds to recover, where he's on shaky legs like we've seen Tim Bradley, and then all of a sudden recover, and even on shaky legs, letting his hands go and refusing to quit, finding a way to win, and then hurt his opponent and come back and get the victory. See, those are those memorable moments that a lot of us carry with us. Because if you ask me, what do you think about Tim Bradley? The first thing comes to mind is what I just said. That guy he was fighting, I can't remember his name, man. He hit a man with that, I think it was a right hand, man. And Tim's, no kidding, his head like swiveled, man. And he went down. I was like, oh, the fight's over. And he got up and stopped the guy. And the second fight is a Providnikov. I don't even think about the Pacquiao fights. I think about that Providnikov fight, though. If you haven't watched Bradley versus Providnikov, go watch it. And then you'll understand what I'm saying when I'm drawing a comparison about bravery. You watch that fight and look what Bradley had to go through to get that victory. And then you look at Terence Crawford. He's never had to endure anything remotely close to that. And some can say because he's just that great of a fighter, he's that dominant. I get it. But that doesn't help his marketability when people want to see more than just someone who's dominant. They want to see you go through adversity. They want to see that. But at the same time, you can't satisfy everyone. The other thing is Tim Bradley, when we think about him, look at his biceps. That was something that was always a topic of conversation, how ripped he would get. And those biceps were crazy. But with Terence Crawford, he's ripped, he's in shape, but there's nothing really jumps out at you with Terence Crawford, like Tim Bradley, his physique. So there's different things about Tim Bradley that I think a lot of boxing fans remember, and a lot of things that had caught people's attention. And I think that helped overall with his marketability. In addition, he stayed with Top Rank, and at the time he had people on the roster, and Aaron was able to make those fights. A lot of really good fights for him. He got in there with Pacquiao a few times and really got paid. And that enabled him to go ahead and quit boxing because he just had so many zeros in his bank account. I remember him saying that. But when we go forward, man, I think it's important that, we pay tribute to these guys who are future Hall of Famers like Bradley, but at the same time take a look at Terence Crawford and figure out, we know he's going to the Hall of Fame, but what can Bradley do to help his marketability? Okay? That I think is extremely important. Now, when we think about why Bradley's so good, why Crawford is so good, right? Now, with Bradley, you got to look at who he defeated. How many people defeated Juan Manuel Marquez? Okay? You got to really look at that. But Marquez was in his prime. Marquez was tightening everybody up. Floyd Mayweather and Bradley made it look pretty damn easy, didn't they? Juan Manuel Marquez, what he was out here doing to Pacquiao and everybody else. Think about Terence Crawford. Who has he fought that has dominated a super elite opponent, and then Crawford's come out and made it look really easy? I'm talking about a Pacquiao level opponent. Who has Crawford come out and done that to? So, again, man, they're both in a different space and time. But some of those wins that Bradley had, it really helped to elevate him. And although he beat Porter. Crawford beat the boy from Australia, Horn. He beat Brook. He beat Khan. But they weren't really, some people don't want to give them the kind of credit because they weren't really in their prime. They were all kind of on the way out. But at the end of the day, he did beat him in dominating fashion. So he deserved the credit. But it didn't really help his profile like Tim Bradley's profile was helped by beating Manuel Marquez. Okay? So we gotta look at that. In addition to that, right, Bradley was a unified two-weight world champion. Crawford's already, I think, across 3 already. And Bradley, and this is the thing, right? He took undefeated records from 4 different fighters. I'm not sure how many undefeated records Bud took. Now, Bradley took on all comers. He didn't play games. There was no back and forth. He took on all comers. I even talked about the war he went through with Ruslan Providnikov, man, which that's probably one of the best fights of all time. Matter of fact, Providnikov Bradley's up there with Gotti and Ward. So if you like Gotti and Ward, but you haven't seen Bradley Providnikov, Providnikov is Provodnikov. Look that up. And then come back and post a comment on here and let me know what you think. But he also went on, he beat Pacquiao. You know, it is what it is. I think Pacquiao beat him the first fight. The second fight, you know, Bradley got the good shot off on him, but it wasn't enough. And it is what it is, man. But that Pacquiao was a special Pacquiao. The fact that he was able to get in there and handle himself, because Pacquiao was hurting him, handle himself was something that deserves a lot of respect, because there are a lot of opponents, man, that just weren't able to handle Pacquiao during that time frame. And to look at the fact that Terence Bradley chose to leave the sport, I think 33 or 34. Terence Crawford's beyond that age, and Bradley had already accomplished a lot of well, he's already captured the attention of a lot of mainstream media and everything because of the fights that he was in. He was very entertaining, and Crawford, and this is the thing, right? When it comes to Floyd Mayweather, when it comes to Bradley, Floyd was more defensive minded. Now, he still was all about his offense, but he was very defensive minded, even when he was Pretty Boy Floyd. Very defensive minded, but that offense was crazy. You look at him changing his style, becoming Money Mayweather. When Floyd made that switch to the Money Mayweather character, boisterous, can be very vile at times, right? His marketability, man, and his what's that called? Not his marketability and his money generating ability went through the roof, man. And a guy like Bradley, he never achieved that, but he was able to get it to where he was a highly desired opponent for fighters, because they know with Bradley they can make decent money. Now Crawford is kind of in a situation like Andre Ward, where because of his values, his family, and who he is, he doesn't feel he should have to be. I think you guys would understand when I say this, like the loud, ignorant, obnoxious, you know, stereotypical African American fighter. You know what I'm saying? Floyd looked at it a little differently. He was like, I got a plan. And he put it in place, and it worked for him. Now, with Crawford, you know, one of the teammates on here, I think it's Bully Block Boxing, right? He was asking me, what do I think Crawford can do to make himself more marketable? With Tim Bradley, I think his nickname was Desert Storm, right? But if you watch him fight, no kidding, it was like that. What happened within the first 24 hours of Operation Desert Storm? It's nonstop action, and if you're not ready, you're not going to get past that first round, which is equivalent to like a 24 hours or more. With Terence Crawford, he was asked, you know, I came up like, well, he needs a name. It's just Terence, it's just Bud Crawford. He doesn't have a nickname, does he? What does Crawford go by? I'll tell you, that's how much I never knew Terence. I don't even think Terence has like a nickname or an AKA or something. But I was thinking more like, you know, Sniper, because that's what you get with Terence Crawford. Or, you know, Silent Assassin is out there for Savannah Marshall, but I think Terence the Sniper Crawford would be on point, because that's what Crawford is. He really doesn't say much, hard to read him, and then you're getting hit with something that you just don't see coming. You know what I'm saying? Like, you just can't plan for what Terence Crawford brings to the ring at times. He really is a sniper. But he maybe coming up with something like that, a moniker, something would help Terence Crawford as well. But I don't know. But I know one thing is the opponents that he has to face. Now, he's faced a lot of opponents, but the names, you know, we may know the names, but it's they aren't huge names like the Spence. He got Porter, you know, Danny Garcia, the Thurman. Like, I still think, and it's unfortunate, that Terence Crawford needs that to put him at that next level. It's very unfortunate. when we think about Tim Bradley, this is where, if they really sit down and have a conversation where Crawford needs to look at Bradley and they need to talk about, okay, who they're fighting. Now, the undefeated fighters that Tim Bradley beat Jesse Vargas. He was undefeated at the time. He beat Devin Alexander, Luis Carlos Abreu. Lamont Peterson was undefeated at the time. Now, you remember Lamont Peterson, a monster, right? Now, the world champions that he defeated, okay? He beat Brandon Rios, Jesse Vargas, Juan Manuel Marquez. He beat Pacquiao, Providnikov, Joel Casamayor, a problem. Devon Alexander was a problem in his before he got on drugs or whatever happened to him. Lamont Peterson, Kendall Holt, that's the guy. That's the guy who hit him with that shot. Beat Kendall Holt and Miguel Vasquez. So when I call off those names right there, a lot of those names we know. And we know Peterson can fight. We know Holt knocking everybody out. Junior Witter knocking everybody out. Casamayor, outboxing, knocking people out. Providnikov, killing people. Pacquiao, we already know. Manuel Marquez, that's a whole nother level. Brandon Rios was very durable, man. He'll come to fight. And Jesse Vargas, in his prime, was a respectable opponent that can get busy too. So just those names of the world champions he defeated, gotta respect it. Now, if we list all the names of Terence Crawford, what names are gonna jump at you like this list? I understand, 2 different periods, those kind of opponents just aren't available. But Terence Crawford did beat a lot of guys. But the names just don't jump out at you like those names I just called off. And again, that's why these guys he fought were good fighters who had huge platforms, huge profiles, and were well known in and out of boxing. And that helped Bradley's profile. So what I'm saying is, to me, Crawford just he got to get the bigger names under his belt. While he's sitting here, whatever's going on with him and Spence, would have been a good opportunity to get in there and bang out, to me, Danny Garcia or Thurman. And I personally think Danny Garcia is an easier fight for Crawford than Keith Thurman. Because Danny Garcia ain't running nowhere. Crawford can just outbox him and make him look crazy. And then probably be the first one to stop Danny Garcia. But Keith Thurman moves a lot. And I still think Crawford will win, but I just think a bit tougher. But at least get another big name on there. Like, the fact that he beat Sean Porter, that helped. Everybody was talking about that. Because finally he got, for the welterweight division, like a really big name. Jeff Horn, whatever, man. But he got a really big name on his profile. But he just needs more. He needs more. But as far as being underappreciated, man, look. The one time where Tim Bradley should have been appreciated and he wasn't, more than ever, when he beat Pacquiao. But again, most people felt like, he went in there and he tried to do his job, but Pacquiao just, outboxed him. He just beat him. But he got a gift decision, and, that had this guy suicidal because of just all the hate he received as a result of getting that win. But again, he was doing interviews on big stages, and they were asking him about this. And these interviews weren't on boxing platforms. They were on huge networks. And a lot of people were able to tune in because now he's talking about the loss to, at that time, probably the biggest boxer in the sport, which they, on an international scale, knew him. And there's this guy talking about the fact that he beat him, didn't get the credit, and he felt suicidal, like he wanted to kill himself. So that helped his profile as well. You see, but Crawford, sometimes you need to have those kind of fights and those kind of situations to elevate yourself. And that would really, if they could really talk Crawford's story. Now, I know his story. It's very interesting, but it's not put out there on the right platform yet for non-boxing fans to look and see and take interest in him. It's a slow process for him, which I think it should have moved a little bit faster. I understand the whole crap with Top Rank and all that, but it is what it is. It is what it is, man. But Tim Bradley was very exciting. Terence Crawford, some may say he's not exciting. I think Crawford's exciting. But I just think what Crawford lacks, when we look at it, I think what he lacks is just really those names on his resume. You could read off the names on Amir Khan's resume, as far as who he fought and who he lost. Tim Bradley, we just read it off. You can look at Lamont Peterson. You can look at a lot of these different fighters and look at who they defeated and just who they faced. And Terence Crawford, he's got some names on there, but the names of those guys, their profiles aren't as big as the names of the guys Bradley faced, and those guys Bradley faced, to me, had bigger profiles at that time when you compare it to the guys Crawford fought. But nothing he can do about it. And right now, not sure what's going to happen, but good luck to what's his name, to Crawford trying to get things together. But Bradley and what's his name, Andre Ward, they went on there and said, when it comes to marketability, man, that it has a lot to do with race, and they feel that race has a lot to do with Terence Crawford not being as marketable as he could be. Now, I personally think with a lot of these boxing analysts, when they write about a fighter, it's pretty objective. I think they just kind of take what they see. But, I don't know, man. When you talk about a guy like Pacquiao and Oscar De La Hoya, the kind of money that those guys were able to make, there are some people who, try to suggest that there are moments where the smiling and waving and being soft-spoken benefits those fighters who don't speak English or come from another country. People fall in love with that and are fascinated with that and fall in love with the stories. But when you have someone who's like that and happens to be African American, the African American is seen more as, soft or not African American enough as a fighter, and that hurts them. And they blame Floyd Mayweather as far as this period in time for kind of hurting the profiles of some of the African American fighters because, we know Floyd Mayweather, man, and how he was, man. When he made that personality change, like I talked about, it worked for him. And the guys like Andre Ward, they didn't want to make those kind of changes. And could you imagine if Andre Ward kind of had a similar attitude like what Floyd Mayweather had as Money Mayweather? Maybe that helps him, maybe it doesn't. But it gets people talking. And once you get people talking, again, it gives people attention, people develop an interest in you, it can help your marketability. But it kind of is what it is, man. Terence Crawford's an exciting fighter. He doesn't receive the fanfare that he wants. But again, I think when you talk about Bradley, I think Crawford can learn a lot from Bradley, especially if he's just trying to understand his situation of why it's so hard for him to get big money fights. And I think when you look at Bradley's profile and what he's done, Crawford has a lot of work to do. Now, I do think if Crawford was in that period where Bradley was fighting, I think Crawford beats him. Okay? So I'm not saying Bradley's better than Crawford. What I'm saying is, when you look at it on paper, the names, what he's done, the type of fights he's been in, it gets your attention more than what you look at what Terence Crawford, who he's fought and type of fights he's been in. Because they've been so one-sided. And that's not a bad thing. But as far as marketability, that he needs a little bit more to give him that boost. Now, if he finally gets this deal done with Spence, then he's out of here, especially if he dominates and knocks Spence out. Like, that's a kind of fight that he needs. But who knows what's going to happen? He may be in there dealing with Boots Ennis because that's the mandatory. So you get in there. If he clips Boots, look, listen, if Crawford clips Boots, right? What does that do for Crawford as far as his marketability? Who the hell knows who Boots Ennis is? We know Boots Ennis is, the torch is about to be handed to that man. But if he goes and he beats Boots Ennis, right? What does that do for Crawford? As far as the non-boxing fans, the casuals, the Dancing with the Stars and all this other crap, right? Who's gonna want to see him? What? Now, if he goes and he beats Thurman, then he beats Spence, he's out of here. Everyone knows who the hell Thurman is. Everyone knows who Spence is. Spence has the storyline. All the crap Spence went through, Spencer's known all across the world now. See, and it's unfortunate, but what I'm saying is there has to be something there to make people really want to know who is this person, or not even want to know, for something to just come across them and they be like, what? What happened to who? Okay, and that's what happened with like Bradley, that Preventer car fighting the Pacquiao, with Earl Spence and that car accident and everything else. You know, they have something there. With Crawford, what does he have? You see? But anyway, man, I just think Bradley can really help him. I really do. He can really help him, man. I don't think being Mayweather-esque or boisterous is the answer. You know, when you're considered boring and undeserving of attention or notoriety, you know, sometimes it's hard to figure out what to do to make sure you can get that attention and get that notoriety and be appreciated for what you bring to the table as a boxer. And for Terence Crawford, I'm not sure what he can do, but I think a good start is kind of getting together with Tim Bradley, have Tim Bradley kind of chirp him up and say, look, this is what I recommend. Because Tim Bradley has a lot of great input and great insight, but it just makes me wonder, has he really grabbed Terence Crawford by the collar and said, hey, look, let me help you. But who knows, you know. But that being said, y'all be cool. Shout out to the veterans. Shout out to everybody across the world who submitted to the subscribed to the channel. It means a lot to me. Let's see if Terence Crawford can get it. Can I improve his profile before the end of the year, and definitely going into next year if he can make it a little bit bigger. I'd like to see him, man, go into like, you know, a minimum guarantees, you know, in his last few years of boxing, man, because he's that good where he deserves it. And I think he can do it. But again, we don't want him to be known for the fights he didn't make, because that seems to be the route he's going if he can't figure out what his problem is with making fights, or what's the underlying reasons why he just can't get fights now that he's not with old man Aaron, you know. But anyway, y'all keep cool. I'm in the breeze.